We'll go ahead and get started with our weekly road and bridge meeting. Looks like we have a few action items on the agenda to begin with. David, do you want to walk us through? You want to start with this Iona Road? Hammond Road that you handed me?
That's the Iona Road, the authorization to proceed. This should be the last parcel on Iona Road to send an offer out to. This is parcel number 51.
Okay, it's Riverwood Development LLC, formerly Rockwell Homes, appraisal fair market value of $5,452.80. Is there any questions on that?
East,
It's,
Rocky Mountain East, or
no, it's on the portion from Hammond Road to 45th East that we're
yeah,
doing the strategic initiative grant on.
I just got one. Rocky Mountain Middle School.
Yeah.
East.
Yeah,
That's the last one.
should be the last one to send out an offer to.
So
You guys-
We
You
haven't
guys
got,
okay with signature of this?
we haven't got a whole lot back yet, but this is the first one to send off to.
So that could be ready to strike next year.
I'm really hoping so. I'm really hoping that we'll be able to go out to bid in December, January and construct it next year. So,
Since Austin's here, we can't instruct you to cut him off from his access. Oh, hi, Austin. I just.
That's why he's here. He can't get out of his house. His neighbor had still blocked off.
He's ignoring us.
Thanks for joining us, Austin. We know you're out of town.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, okay, what's next?
Next is SSYA AF subdivision,
this
Division One,
is a small, dealer put down off Sunnyside.
final plat and development agreement. It's a one lot subdivision off the.
Finally getting it done, although the building's pretty well done.
Yeah,
This is
We'll have a
development
signature on
agreement.
that one too.
Conditional CO there. waiting
You guys-
for some approval.
Well, they won't be able to get a conditional CO or anything. They've got a permit to construct, I think, a building permit, but
A conditional permit,
yeah,
not sealed.
but they haven't done any work on the public improvements yet.
Yeah, but it was held up for, what was it held up for, Austin?
What was that?
Yeah, what was Mazda held up for? Some approval by,
DQ.
DEQ. Okay. Have they got that?
Yeah, they've got that all taken care of. They should be having their final plat here soon, so.
That's on the agenda today, the final plat.
Okay, perfect.
It was just signed.
Well, I guess we can finally release their bond then. So
Don't
that'll
do
be
that.
good.
Better keeping that in hand.
Are you okay, what you got next?
Okay, next is a conditional acceptance for Elevate Academy. And is subdivision north side of Lincoln.
Off of Walton, it's a new
What's the
new
name?
charter school. They had the ribbon cutting last week. So.
Okay,
And another conditional acceptance for Wolf Creek subdivision, division number 4.
On Wolf Creek number 4, I
Yeah.
want to make a note in the meeting minutes that I did stop them from putting curb and gutter along 49th North because they would have put it in the wrong place for the 5-lane arterial road. And so they haven't put the curb and gutter along 49th North. I didn't want them to put it there and then have to rip it all out, so.
Good idea.
And the next one is a notice of public hearing, be held September 18th. For vacating some easements in block 7 of Lincoln Park subdivision, division number 2. And, doing a replat, and they need to get rid of some easements and put them in other spots, so.
Do you guys have any questions or concerns on this or Sam? Things are still moving along.
What do we want to talk about next? Maybe this, landowner concurrence form,
So
This is Steve Rhodes. No, well, not really, but
and I guess I wish he was here,
Steve,
yeah.
he rarely gets out of his house. He's pretty stoked up.
So what is this?
Well,
Explain this to me.
they filled this out, and, the email chain that I received stated that they wanted the fence, the property line between, the landfill and their parcel, which would be the east and west side.
Is it between the landfill and the parcel?
Yeah, that's-
The part, he's part.
That,
East
email,
portion.
the email indicated that it would be between the parcels, so not along the field.
He doesn't communicate very well anymore, but he was real decent.
Well, isn't he coming to meet with you tomorrow?
And
he's gonna try to come meet with me tomorrow,
he's in-
but about a different thing, so.
So can I understand that?
We asked
Ask him for sure if it's,
yeah, what he's wanting to do for sure.
Cause I don't think we want to allow him to fence off in areas that even, I mean, the CRP
This is-
basically goes for 20 years, and I think within the 20-year lifespan of where this is going, I think there's not gonna be a whole lot of left ground for him to leave after 20 years, so.
So what is he?
well, if he's
We
fencing
don't know.
his property line, that's different
Then
Well,
than
you
fencing our
wouldn't
leased.
need one of these
leased
forms
property.
if he's
Right.
fencing his line.
So where's the fence going then?
We don't know.
Oh, you don't know?
That's the problem, cause this, from the description, basically looked like it was cutting across from here. And our ground goes past there. And I don't wanna allow him to fence across where we will likely be within 10 years.
Is this ground he's leasing?
He is leasing some of this back, yes, and farming it.
Well, he's leasing all the landfill property comes clear up here and then across. This makes about 3 little jogs.
He is farming he's farming a lot of it. We had to cut him back
Beyond the pond.
beyond the pond, but again, we don't know exactly where he's wanting to fence, and without knowing that,
Well, I keep hearing that he's farming it, but that he's calling it CRP, or he's got it in CRP, or he's putting it in CRP, so is he farming it or is it in CRP?
We don't know where he wants it. No, that's the reason I said, just give us a form, but get soil conservation to define
yeah,
what this allows.
Well, then is he gonna graze it? I mean, sometimes on drought years, they allow you to graze that CRP. Is that why he wants to fence it?
well, he's supposed to be coming and meet with me tomorrow, so maybe we can get some
I think
clarification.
we better.
Okay.
And in my mind, even if it's around in 10 years, as long as he agreed to remove the fence, I mean, if he can get 10 years of use out of it. I wouldn't be
And
opposed
that's
to that.
included on this form, that condition.
And that's what we'd have to make sure that we concur that he can do this for this time in this area, and that's what,
I think we should accommodate him as long as we, you know, does not.
It's a-
as long as it doesn't negatively impact the transfer or the Houston Hill.
Right.
you know.
Okay. Well, let us know how that goes.
What's that? Very well.
That's all the action items we had.
Okay.
Give us the definition. Sign all the application. So it's kind of his court.
Okay, if that's all the action items, let's go to the fuel station discussion. Mike, would you join us here at the table?
Sure. Thank you.
It's your table, so it's, I'm happy to take it as it is.
So I'll let Commissioner Christensen kind of lead this out. I know he had some questions.
Yeah, well, just for the introduction, Lee Spurgenshaw requested that, we get together with Mike to see if there's a path forward on the fuel island. Or that was driven by this letter we received from Pat Alexander, which contains some things in there that we weren't, aware that they decided. You know, we could maybe, if you got a copy of this.
I think I'm aware of what's in it, but I don't know that I've read it.
Well, I got someone out.
Here's one without.
Yeah, I know it's healthy, so we'll go down through it, give the explanations on it. Let's see. She indicated, I guess I'm curious, was this the formal response from the city on this, or was this Pam's response?
Without reading it, I couldn't tell you.
Well,
I'll tell you what I think the,
okay, we'll go through them one by one, because there's one in here, you know, that they do, that you had indicated you could take care of that last meeting. And, they pretty much said, you know what, so I don't know if they was.
well, what I'd like to maybe understand on 8.2 is exactly the county's concern.
And that's what we're going through.
And while I think that there's nothing in this agreement that couldn't be changed, I just want to make sure everybody's walking into some eyes wide open. There are elements, I'm not your lawyer, and I can't dream to assume what the county's priorities are. And if I am wrong, I'm wrong, but there are elements of 8.2 that I would think would be in the county's interest to maintain. So I want to know exactly what it is the county would like changed there.
Well, and that's,
What is 8.2? Is it long or?
8.2 is the wrap-up provision that's in the
Oh.
agreement that provides that if, after the end of the agreement expires, if the city continues to operate the facility, the county is released from any ongoing environmental concerns.
yeah,
And we could remove that, but then
it also, well, listen, I've got them kind of.
Okay.
in order,
That's-
so we can. Some of those. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
We start down. On the estimates and everything. And, the city had authorized a total $160,000 to be set aside for new fuel tanks and or canopy. Was approved in the tentative budget. The question on that one is if we were to go ahead, and this is where it ties back into the 8, because at the end of the term, there's no, under 8.2, there's no option for renewal. And basically, at the end of the term, is the end of the term at the city's discretion. So if Correct.
When this agreement expires, should the city decide to continue to operate the fuel station, that the city will do that on their own without any more contribution, including any environmental cleanup ordered by the EPA or the Department of Environmental Resources.
Or any participation by the county if they so choose. See, that was the concern. It's a unilateral end of term when
You're out, it's ours.
Well, I'm just gonna make a general statement on every agreement ever, which is that if people want to continue their relationship, they can. I would think broadly conceptually, if the city and the county are gonna engage in a large capital expense on the fuel facility, this agreement as written would require an amendment for that capital expense. If there are a couple of things that I think the county and the city might like to have in there. If we're gonna engage in a big capital expense, maybe the parties would like to assure each other that neither one of them will breach the agreement or terminate the agreement for convenience for a period that makes sense, say 5 or 10 years, so that if you're putting some skin in the game, you're confident that the other side's not gonna walk home with its ball now that it's got the ball. I think that that'd be reasonable. The unilateral part of it, what would the county prefer to see there? An option to renew?
Yeah,
I think that's reasonable. I don't know why the city would object to that. I do think the city would want to keep in the language that if the county doesn't want to continue the relationship, the city has the right to maintain the fuel facility and operate it without having to be required to remediate it and remove it.
Sure. Yeah. But that's also if the county wants, because they made a statement in here during the discussion, let's see. County exercise itself.
I think that is fine. So under the agreement, the party that's in management of the facility, which right now is the city, is allowed to charge a 6-cent maintenance fee per gallon for fuel that the other entity uses. If that entity raises that fee, the other entity has the right to come on and manage the facility. So that what I think the council is saying here is that they're not raising the fee, and so there isn't any need to transfer the management of the facility to the county at this time.
And that's clarification, because when I talked to Lisa Burdenshaw, she wasn't aware of this agreement when it was presented at the budget.
Which agreement?
The original agreement was part of this discussion. So I don't know if the council has approved that or who made that decision.
Well, I can go and clarify with the council, maybe have a vote on it if that would help. What I do know is that the city has not authorized it, the city council has not authorized an increase in the fuel maintenance cost.
Correct. Okay, but the concern on that, and this goes back to the original proposed language, is the changes that were proposed. That's what initiated this discussion almost 10 months ago. And we've been trying to get clarity, but one of the issues we've had, and I think Pam Alexander acknowledged early on, is lack of communication. Sure. And through this process, the only way we've been able to get answers is to schedule meetings, send a list of questions, which we did prior to this memo, and then we received the memo, because otherwise there's no communication. Have you had any communication since she said they would work on improvement?
I haven't had any communication from Pam for quite a while.
So that's the one issue on here, because it's the lack of communication that's kind of making the wheels come off on this.
Sure.
We've seen no move, no proposal on ways to improve that. But the proposed change basically took out the check, and balance, whatever we call it, on the county's behalf, to say if we think that fee is unjustified, which when we drilled down on this last one, we found out that the 2% increase was tying to what they called unanticipated revenues, which were going to cover the part that they didn't submit to the county for approval. So, we just need something a little more transparent on that. I would think that a system where if the city proposes a fee increase to the county should have an option like that. The difficult thing we've got is when they change the software unilaterally without any notification or the input, it basically makes it so it's unusable to the county. We can't use it in our fleet management. Lance has done the research and there's no patch, unless it's customary.
What did you receive before? I mean, how
In the beginning,
in the beginning? I mean, I hear that the electronic part of it doesn't tie in. What was the electronic connection like before?
I don't know that there was an electronic connection before. It was just. We would get reports of
You
the
get
fuel.
paper reports? Or
Yeah, they were paper reports.
is that what you're still getting in?
We talked them into sending over the spreadsheets, at least in raw form, for lack of a better term,
Yeah,
and then we have to take the information.
So how is it unusable?
Well, when the city purchased that, it ties into their fleet management. So it automatically goes in there on the vehicle and the mileage and everything for the fleet to be able to manage.
But Roger, I'm sorry. You said it was that the city had made a change that had made it unusable for the county.
Because it's not compatible with.
No.
with our
You
fleet.
said that made the ability for what the county was doing unusable.
Well, for our ability to manage, because they've got a proprietary type software that we would have to repurchase.
Okay. But that isn't
in the
That
event,
isn't what, you were getting before.
Which,
You were getting paper reports before. And you're getting paper reports essentially now.
we're not seeing down the same pipeline here. I think what Roger's talking about is if we opted to take over management, we can't. That's not an option.
But we can't take over management unless they raise the
Unless,
fee.
and that's what I was looking at. I thought in the original agreement, it was, you can, and then we will.
So does the
Manage the
county want
facility.
the option to manage the facility
well.
regardless of whether the rate
Let's
changes?
back up to, this was the change that was proposed to eliminate that. And that was the balance. Yeah. Pam acknowledged she wasn't even aware of this agreement. When this was brought up.
Well, I think it's clear that, the agreement, hasn't been strictly followed, maybe by both sides.
I don't know where we've been in deficit. Because, as long as the piece seemed fair, and that was the discussion we had with Craig Lords when we put this together. To have some kind of a check and balance. Pretty much the statement's been made that there's no interest in letting the county manage. Okay, so that kind
Well,
of,
is the request that the county manage it now?
no, we haven't made that request.
Okay.
We're building this piece by piece. The taking away that option pretty much put it unilaterally into the city to say, we need this fee increase. And the other language in there says if you don't respond, it goes into effect. Okay, but what happens in the case that the county says it's not justified, like the last 2 cent when we found? What happens if the city's not willing to allow the county to exercise that option? Then you end up into what was this? Proposal. Management option, you end up. The county in the position of having to terminate for cause, which kicks a whole other series of things in there. You know, just a suggested possibility would be to say, if you propose that fee, and here's where the two elected bodies at the time would come together and say, yes, this is reasonable, we agree, or if it's not reasonable, it should be having something where the county has to concur with the increase. If you're wanting to change that management option.
Okay, so. I don't think that. The agreement is. In such bad shape. I actually think it's a fairly fair agreement. It's extremely fair.
Right.
And I'm not really interested in seeing that many changes. What I'm hearing from you is that you're not interested in changing the management option. And I think makes sense. I'm not opposed to that.
And I don't know where this decision was made, but it says we're not interested in entertaining the county managing.
Well, I think that, and I think really that ought to be interpreted that the city's not interested in that option now, especially where the fee isn't changing.
Well,
If the county would like to manage the facility now, it would require some amendment.
I'm not into interpreting, I feel more by the clear language of what was put in here.
So what the language says is that the city has stated they are not interested in discussing the option for the county to manage the facility. Does that say that will never occur, or they're not interested in discussing it now? Why would we discuss it now? The language hasn't triggered it, Roger.
Why would you assume that it says never?
Well, you're saying that, maybe we're talking past each other.
Yeah, look at the clear language of it. It says the city is not interested in discussing the option for the county to manage. Period.
Okay, well.
So,
But the contract says contrary to that, right?
I
And so I think we
appreciate
live
what
by
Pam's
the
written
contract.
here, and debating what Pam meant probably isn't that productive for what you're hoping to get done today,
No.
but we can talk about it.
and we had hoped,
You have the contractual right to do it.
that's why we wanted Pam to come in, but she sent this over. They called Commissioner Reed, said, do I need to show up? Well, you pretty much answered all those without opportunity for discussion. So that's when Lisa said, is there a way to put something together going forward?
Well, and that's what I'm here to try to figure out to do. I don't think that, the ultimatum from Pam or the city is that in order to move forward, that the agreement must be changed so the county never has the right to manage it. I don't think that's ever really been part of the conversation. I think the only part of the conversation is that heard, don't know, and you can clarify the record on the county's position, that the county has expressed some interest to manage the facility now, even though the
No.
fee hasn't changed.
No, that's an assumption on your part.
Then I think, if that's my assumption, I'm happy to set it aside. What I'm hearing is that the county does not want to manage the facility today, but wants to retain the contractual right to manage the facility if the city increases the rate.
Correct.
I don't know that there's disagreement.
Or an equivalent. For example, the city has to agree, the county, has to agree to the change. You know, if you want a 2-cent increase and you can't justify it to the commissioners at the time, and the county doesn't agree, then the fee doesn't increase.
Okay. Well,
That's.
I think
an alternative.
that's essentially the choice that the city and the county have now. Is
It is.
if the city wants to raise the fee and
But
they don't want to have management, then they don't have a choice but to keep the fee where it's
the
at.
offer that got this discussion going, included a 2-cent increase. And basically followed up by this language, the city's not interested in discussing or whatever, they said, pursuing, letting the county do that.
Roger, what are you asking me to do? Because
What Lisa
if
requested.
what you'd like to do is complain about this letter,
No.
you can do that,
No,
but
don't turn
no,
back for that.
well, I'm just trying to figure out where we're going. I want to get a productive conversation, but I feel like we're cycling this.
And that's why we're trying to get clarity on this, because this is a communication that set out some conditions, that cause some concern. Whoever made the decision, whether this is not sanctioned by the council, wherever the decision making, this is the communication we got.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, what what I was tasked to do when I came visit with you is to see if there were areas that we could
And
look at
that's what
expanding the fuel facility.
before we got derailed on trying to parse language,
Okay,
that's what I was gonna go down through on the areas that we have concern with. It would be helpful to have in a revised agreement, if there's gonna be any revisions, something in a process of communication. Because, you know, we have the verbal commitments along the way to improve communication. This process has gone on 10 months now.
mhm.
And, you know, what we informed Pam in the beginning is we're gonna start down parallel tracks, so that we have options at the end. Well, we're running close to the time. 10 months is quite a while to walk through this. So, and I don't know what could be included in there as requirements for communication. That's a concern.
We could do lots of things in the agreement.
This
We
is
could do a lot of things outside of the agreement.
well, but outside the agreement doesn't seem to be satisfying what we're trying to get. But these are suggestions, for you to do what Lisa said, see if you can generate a path forward, okay?
Well, it is the county, I'm a big picture guy. This is minutia, communication. You know, we didn't like the way that Pam wrote this letter because we think it meant the city wanted to take it out completely, which I think is an assumption on your part, Roger, if we're being fair on assumptions.
I disagree about communication and everything in a partnership in minutia.
Okay. What my understanding was, the big sticking point was whether or not there was enough money to make this deal go forward.
Well, that's the other one, because, what was put in the budget and, was only partial of what, the commitment would have to be able to get the, and I don't know if there's some kind of assurance that could be in there that the council would, appropriate, to complete the project. And if we did, there would need to be something in there, that the county doesn't make the investment. And by the time you get the improvements made, it's gonna be a couple of years down the road. You've got pretty much a 13-year effective life. And the estimates, that they got for the improvements over there are about 650, 250, about 950,000. So that'd be about 450,000 commitment.
Is that to expand the fuel facility or?
And the canopy,
Okay,
okay?
that's, where did that estimate come from? So it's something that the city received or something the county received?
It's something the city received.
Leonard Petroleum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do have that in here on an email on what they think it would cost, and the tanks, their estimate was
674 is what in paragraph 1, it looks like it was.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
that email went to Commissioner Reed. I don't know that I ever saw a copy.
Yeah, no, I've got a copy of that.
But that was on the tanks, and then the canopy, because of the retrofit, would be a little more expensive than new, was about 250.
Was that also in the email? Cause that's not listed in here.
The canopy was not part of it. It was not part of the 674.
So for the county to consider investing that kind of money with an effective life of probably 12 to 13 years, without an assurance that there's an option to renew that or get the money back, which was a concern in section 8.2. Is that at the end, at the sole discretion of the city, they can just not renew it.
I think that the closing needs to be amended to continue this so that, in the event that it is canceled at the end of its life, the county still is bought out for the, amount of money that we have invested in it. Otherwise, why wouldn't the county pull out on year 29 and get paid out? You know, so it needs to be at the end of the life as well. I think that's the main thing, and then it helps give us some assurance to invest more money into it, that it's money well spent.
And I'm not sure, personally, I'm not sure that shouldn't be any either way. If we get to the end of the contract and the city wants out and we want to continue, then they
We
can
buy them
buy
out.
them.
Well, but therein lies the problem because it's on city property.
Yes.
Yeah, we'd have to buy them out with a perpetual lease, you know, some type of a lease
Why wouldn't we just sell you the real estate?
or that.
Because cities don't like to sell dirt in counties.
I know they don't, but
Lease is an easy thing.
we've done it with this
Yeah.
commission.
Yeah.
It could be either
But
way.
you see what I'm saying? I just think, well, it's kind of one-sided for us to say, well, we want to be able to get bought out at the end. But the city should have the same option.
Well,
This shouldn't be adversarial like we're trying a court case.
yeah, I'm not trying to try a
Yes.
court case. I'm trying to understand
want-
the underlying concern. I hear some of the underlying concerns that make sense to me. Others, I think, are maybe assumptions on my part, maybe assumptions on your part, and that aren't productive.
And I need to hear those with the assumptions on your part, where we're not being productive. But let's get through the others.
Okay.
Before you give us, before you tear us apart.
I'm not tearing anybody apart.
Okay, the fee increase, 4.3, somehow needs to be mutually accepted by the
Could I
county.
clarify just a couple things?
Okay,
So in paragraph 1, it does say that the city received an estimate to install 2 to 3 new tanks. And then they set aside a budget amount that may be used for that, that's nowhere close to that amount. And so is the city going to look at spending that $160,000 and ask the county to participate of another $160,000? Or are they gonna try to go half of the 674 and ask the county to participate in half of the 674 to do some capital project there to increase the fuel capacity?
My understanding on that decision was that that's what the council felt like it could allocate next year.
and talking to Lisa, that's what they will be soon. But I
So are they gonna ask the county to put in
It's still
160,000?
50/50. Although one of the changes they made was to change us at, usage 60/40. Which conflicts with some of the other buyouts, because the intention of this was half full was empty. And, the county owns 50% of that, any kind of a buyout, you have to go down to that. And then reimburse if the county's going out
Well,
50% of that storage.
one thing that could be done is that we could break apart what's been done before and what's about to be done is 2 different buyout schedules. So that the facility that exists as today, because what I'm hearing is a concern that the city will contribute less than half.
Yeah.
And then be paid out.
That wasn't my concern, Lance has raised it.
Well, I don't know if the city is going to ask us to contribute 160,000 because that's what they've been able to allocate.
Well, I think that's,
That would be the 50.
yeah, that would be 50/50. I don't think that a capital expansion that's out there under the agreement is required to be 50/50. In fact, the agreement conceptualizes that if there's additional capital improvements that occur out there, the parties will meet and discuss how they're gonna do that and to kind of discuss those in a separate agreement. I think
didn't
that,
read that into this.
okay, well, it's in there, and if I think it would be silly and absurd for two parties to say, oh no, regardless of what anybody does, it's always gonna be split 50-50 afterwards. It isn't fair. I don't think that's where the city council would want.
But that's a change. That's a change.
It would,
The existing contract.
it would be a change.
So
This-
change.
This building the additional expansion onto that facility would be a change. And nobody under this agreement can construct new capital out there without visiting and doing it by mutual agreement.
All right.
I think the agreement requires that to be reduced to writing. I know that you just said you didn't see that in there, but I mean, I think it's in there.
Let me understand what you just said. So are you saying that if the county wanted to move forward, put another tank there and a canopy and expand it, the city can say, well, we're only gonna contribute this much, the rest is on you? Is that what you're saying? Because it was
I'm
our
saying
desire
that's-
to do it.
I'm saying that's one possibility amongst many possibilities to having, to doing some capital improvement out there that maybe one party's more excited about than the other.
And the one would put more money into it then.
And I would think what I'm hearing from the commission is that whatever happens out there next, they just want it to be fair. I agree that that ought to be fair. I think what we've got now is an extremely fair agreement. My hope would be that we would find something that everybody would agree would be fair. One thing that would be fair is to clarify that if it isn't 50-50 going in, it isn't gonna be 50-50 coming out.
Okay, on buyback, but also on amount of fuel used.
Sure.
So one of our biggest concerns is not enough capacity there. If we want to expand it, then would that extra capacity be ours? If we're the ones who pay for it?
I would think that would be fair.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And that might be a more easier way for us to expand capacity without building a whole new one. But that new capacity would have to be ours.
And I think there would be a way to describe how that would be done, whether it was reserved capacity that couldn't be dispensed except for permission from the county.
Okay, oh, I
Or-
think that seems right.
Or it could be done like it is now, that it gets accounted and that people just anticipate that it's gonna be this rough number. There's a lot of ways to get there. And the question is, what's the fair way to get there for everybody, in my opinion?
We've tried to express what we think our fair way is, but we've never really got an answer from the city what they think fair way is. So I think that's what we're trying to come to. And I agree with Lisa, see if find a way we can come together and move this forward. But we need to know kind of what the intentions of the city are.
Well, I think that the only real intention that has been made clear from the city council is that if you wanted to do something next year, they'd be willing to contribute up to $160,000 next fiscal year.
Okay,
I don't think that that's a limit on what they're willing to do.
but we need clarification on that, because if you're gonna go over 160 units for a canopy, and then they say we're not, what happens after that?
Well,
Um,
and Roger, did you see it? Because Austin told me that the city put 260 in their budget.
That was.
They did,
Which is different than this letter.
But I think, knowing budgeting, I think that's account, and they're going to give the spending authority.
Okay,
I could be wrong.
I could find out. What I remember the discussion at the public meeting being was to set aside 160. That's my
Okay.
recollection.
okay.
They're not gonna finalize that till
The
Thursday.
city would set aside 160.
Yeah.
But to spend it, we would have to
Had
match
to put
that.
in.
So, yeah, and I hear what you're saying, that maybe the 260 that's in the budget document contemplates something from the county, but if it was a 50-50 split, wouldn't it be 320?
Yeah, it wouldn't, that doesn't make sense. And I'm-
Yeah,
So I don't know what that is about. I'm happy to find out. But my recollection was that the vote that was taken was 160.
The underlying broader principle is, what assurances, if we start down that road and invest some money, that we're gonna be able to complete it, because our biggest concern is the storage in case of a shut off. You know, you've got the provision in there, if the feds come in and declare a national emergency, they can come in and compensate it.
Okay, well, Austin
They've
just,
got tanks, they could do that if they want. to.
Austin just,
They won't pay attention to our paper.
Austin just texted me and said there was 375,000 set apart, 275 for canopy, 100 for tanks. So that goes beyond what this letter Pam said, and it tells me that the city wants to work with us to do this. I mean, that they are showing some good faith in,
But they haven't communicated that back to us.
no, I wish we.
The sidelines.
Well,
On conversations
Let's,
with Lisa.
let's talk about maybe some options that I could bring back to the council. And I'd prefer to stick with the major roadblocks to making something happen, which in my view are not the communication concerns and maybe misrepresentations and assumptions and lack of communication that's happened in the past. To me, the major sticking point is dollars. It always is dollars.
I think that's, it is for me.
And so, if we can think about, some ways to conceptualize a deal, then I and Weston can take a pen to paper to try to get that on a way so that we can have some expectation of what the relationship will be in the future. And that could include a multitude of other little changes that ought to take place anyway. But the broad roadblocks that are in the way of making something happen, I think we ought to talk about. So one option would be that the agreement could be modified, or we create a new agreement that would conceptualize the capital investment by the parties in a couple of different packages. One would be the package that was done first, which would be 50-50. The next one would be maybe the canopy, which would be whatever split made sense between the parties. And one could be the tanks themselves, or it could be the canopy and tanks together, or it can be everything all together. But I think it might make more sense to split those up and call out exactly what it is that everybody is willing to contribute. And then we can talk about what everybody should expect to get when the agreement wraps up. And I think what would be fair would be that if you contribute 60% towards the construction of a new capital canopy, that you would get 60% of that in the event of whatever its fair market value was when the agreement terminated for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if there's another way to look at that, but that'd be one way to look at it. Another way would be to limit fuel, regardless of the contribution, that the total fuel in the facility itself, you know, is let's say, I'm throwing out numbers that I have no idea have any relationship in, so that please don't interpret this as some kind of expectation on the city's part. Let's say that with the new capital expenses, that what the value that's maybe the county has is 80%. City has more like 20. Maybe the way that moves forward is we say, okay, well, the fuel that's in the tanks, all the tanks, is 80% to counties and 20% to cities, and the city can't take down more than 20% to do it that way. So there's a lot of ways to do it.
The tough part about that is that the city is managing it and running it, so what, we pay 80% of the cost of managing it then, I mean, that's.
Yeah, and I think
That's
that's a
something we
fair
gotta
point
work out.
too. If it turns out that the capital cost, some cost of whatever's out there, let's say it is something like 80% that the county's gonna contribute. Maybe at that point, it would make sense for the city to relinquish maintenance over it.
That's what I would like to see, that whoever has the majority ownership in it manages it.
Okay,
I think that makes sense, and when you say if the agreement terminates in any way, then the party that has 60% in or 80 would get paid out that. Again, I said before, that termination's gotta go to the end of the lease as well. So at the end of the 30-year, there is some automatic renewal, or if there's no renewal, then the party get bought out if there's not a renewal. Because right now that renewal's the option of the city. And so the county needs some assurance that, yeah, we've got 75% of the cost of it, that we're gonna be bought out even at the end of the 30 years, not at year 29, you know? Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense. I guess my only concern with that is, and only because of some work I've done before I joined the city, is that these fuel gas station type facilities have some kind of expected lifespan where the value of whatever it is essentially zero, because at that point it's only a cleanup project. So I think my only concern on that is reading this, I'm confident that the attorneys that put this together conceptualized a situation in which the facility would have a value of zero. And that's why the city wanted to run the risk of running a facility that potentially subject to some EPA cleanup and wanted to do it on its own. I'm confident that is why the county wanted to have nothing to do with it. The city decided to do that without remediating it at the end. I don't really read that section as the city's sole option to have a fuel facility no matter what the county wants. I look at that really more like as, and again, I'm just imputing things based off of what my experience is, and I could be completely wrong, but my suspicion is that the reason that language was drafted was because there was concern on the county's part that they would have environmental cleanup provision hanging over its head if the city continued to run a facility that had a value of zero.
No. I was involved in that, and that's not the case.
Well, why did the county then agree to give the city unilateral authority to run a facility without paying you back?
At the end of 30
There's
years.
oversight. I mean, knowing what I know now, the issues that have come up, I would have done that differently, but that's
Who's,
15 years ago.
sorry, Roger, who's internally drew this up?
I think it was Dale Store, city attorney. We looked at it and, tried to anticipate all those, but the manager over there pretty much indicated that the life of these, which you probably use for depreciated value of a tank, is 60 years.
Well,
So there's a lot of differences
certainly,
there.
if there's gonna be a 60-year life new capital improvement in, then that part of it needs to be addressed to give everyone some confidence that nobody's gonna take their ball and go home with it.
Yeah, but I also think that, to satisfy the city's concern on that, the remediation could carry on till it was terminated if there was an extension put in there. Because that's something, if we did our own facility, we'd be on the hook for it. The only thing is,
Well, then I think it would be fair also to say that if we're gonna continue this and everyone's got the right to continue with it, maybe everybody's got skin in the game on the environmental cleanup that might come. And so maybe that's another good reason to change up that language in 8.2 to make it clear that the city and county are committed for the long term, including any environmentals that might come.
That seems reasonable.
yeah,
If the county's gonna be able to have that, continued option.
and another concern is what happens in case of a disruption? Who's the gatekeeper? Because it's addressed on the federal level that they can just come in with their siphon hose in the tank and take it away from you.
It's really hard to argue with a guy with a tank.
Yeah, it is. But what happens?
Unless you have a tank trap.
What happens on the national emergency when they don't come try to take it and we try to distribute it? Because there's, what we suggested is that the emergency manager who is already subject, he's the one, pretty much the gatekeeper, and distributes resources in case of any emergency. You know, because there would be a priority. You know, some of the city may think that continuing to have buses run is more important than continuing to have our snowplows or law enforcement. Well, it needs to be somebody who's a gatekeeper in case of an emergency.
Well, I thought we discussed that in
I thought we had to,
state law, that's the way it is, but
Right.
that needs to be part of this agreement.
we can reference in the agreement if it would bring some confidence to everyone's, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Walker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that if it would bring confidence to everybody on what the operating rules would be in an emergency, even if they are outlined in state law. We could add a paragraph into the agreement that says the parties acknowledge that the state law on emergencies exists, and that we're gonna, in the case of an emergency declared by the president of the United States, governor of the state of Idaho, the commissioners of Idaho County, or the mayor of Idaho Falls, that we're gonna follow the emergency manager rules.
Yeah, I think that would take care of that.
Which was, you know, you referenced that it was brought up before, but then we haven't heard a thing back, which is one concern about the length of time it's taken to get here. And the length of time it may take to revise this.
Well, maybe I would like to pitch one other option there to improve that part of the communication, at least to the point of getting something on paper that everyone can look at and decide whether it's in anybody's interest to do there. Is that, I have been asked by the council to kind of see if there's a way forward. I think that they've given me some authority to explore options. I can't commit them to do anything. I can't negotiate anything, but I can draft up options. I can present ideas. If the county would like to have somebody with a telephone I can call, I could call them and they could feel free to call me. Is there an individual that I ought to be?
I would prefer it to be me. We're kind of knowledgeable on this. And I'm kind of liaison with Lisa, who's kind of undertaken that. So that's where our communications have been.
Well, what would be most productive for you next, and when would you like to hear from me again? Would you like me in your office tomorrow? I could make it happen.
Probably within a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Which, you know.
What would you
might not-
like to see me put together? I threw out
Why
a
not
couple.
hurt to sit down, which has been counter to what's been dictated in the future or in the past with a city council person and a commissioner to negotiate through these. matters.
I will tell you that there are some personalities that have strong opinions on that. I will make the pitch.
One of them is your boss.
Well, that my
We
boss in
appreciate
the city of Idaho Falls is enunciated by the elected sovereign will of its elected representatives, so that's what my boss is.
I know. But it would be the quickest way to get some of these resolved, which, you know, we've tried that approach on, say, area of impact and just hasn't been successful. You need to be able to sit down with the legislative body to discuss policy, things like that, that they have to approve. But that's in the discretion of whatever city council wants to do.
Well, I'm happy to liaise with you. I'm happy to make the pitch that it could be helpful to have a council member tag along for those conversations. I can't obligate anybody to come.
That's, you ask for a suggestion. That's a
And
suggestion.
I think it's a good suggestion. I can pass it along, but just know that if it's just me, then it's just you and me.
Yeah. I know.
And I don't care if any of them want to tag along. If I agree with you that
We could
that's more
sort
helpful.
of get together with Weston, but that ties both of you up, and Weston has to get up to speed, and I'm not sure then we don't communicate to him the things you've heard today. You know, but I think you've heard enough today to go back and take it, put together a proposed policy for us to consider.
Well, I think what I'd like to do is present a few different ideas
Okay.
on how a new capital expense would get done. I'm happy to kind of write those up really informally and generally with the understanding that they're really informal and general. And have you look at those, and I'm happy to consider other ideas that the county might have. I think ultimately my hope would be that we would be able to reach an agreement that's fair or operate under the agreement that we've got, which I think is pretty fair deal. It's clear that when it was negotiated, people were concerned about it. There's a lot of balance back and forth. And certainly I would hope that the features of that part of the agreement, the fairness of it, would continue through whenever the city can agree with the county in the future, that the county would feel that it was fair for them too.
Because the biggest roadblock other than communications and things like that, like partnerships work better. I agree. I don't know how we're ever gonna dictate that, you know, because everybody has their own idea of what adequate communication is. But the big roadblock is the desire of the county to have extra capacity because the usage has gone up, and it's gone up disproportionately on the city side. You know, because of changes that have been made, you know, road and bridge, or the street department now runs their own trucks instead of contracting out, so they have a bigger demand on fuel. I don't know if they've allowed gift to.
The city has not allowed GIF to operate on it because it's not something the county has agreed to do.
Which is good, because the concern there is that takes more what would be the reserves in there.
I think
And that would have to be negotiated.
I think GIF has some interest in joining what they perceive as a cost savings and buying in bulk and want to contribute to that, but I'm of the opinion that they can't jump on there
Yeah,
without they're a separate political entity.
solve this problem for,
Well,
to the next one.
Well, I'm not, what I would like to say is I'm with you 100% on
Okay.
that. I do not want to talk about TRIPTA operating as gift, jumping on this until the city and the county are satisfied that we've worked through other issues that
Thank you.
are interfering with the county and the city's operation.
The main roadblock is if we're gonna spend that much money, having something at the end that protects that investment.
Well, and I think that's fair. I don't think that the city is opposed to the county protecting taxpayer funds and making sure that they're going to end back up with the entity that expended those tax funds. In my opinion, those funds are sacred and that they are to be kept track of carefully. And one thing that I see sometimes in the past is some sloppy handling, handshakiness on it'll all work out in the end for John Q taxpayer. Well, I think that if you're paying a county assessment and you're paying a city assessment, you should have some expectation that those being managed properly. Part of that is if the county and the city are going to cooperate, that it's not a situation in which the county residents are subsidizing the city. And that the city residents who are also county residents aren't subsidizing just county residents. But there's ways to get there, and there's ways to make sure that's fair. One of them is to make sure that if there's gonna be an unequal upfront capital expense, that somehow is reflected on the back end. I think that's what happened here is there was an equal capital put in, and there's gonna be an equal capital exit on the back end, with maybe the minor concern that the city was gonna operate the facility and release the county from its environmental obligations in a way that I can see that the commission's concerned about.
In other words, you can see our concern that at the end of the contract, the city can just say, we're not gonna do this, and then there's no way out.
I can see at the end of the agreement that the city doesn't want to decommission the facility, wants to keep running it. They have the option to do that. And that if the county says, we'd really like to get along, I suppose that a really disagreeable future council could say, well, tough,
Yeah.
we're not gonna do it. There's
And what we're trying to do is not, allow for those suppositions, because
And I would hope that the people of our community wouldn't elect such a hardline council, but maybe they could.
yeah. So, I mean, that's the major, hurdle, I think, and then, we have to evaluate if, the city isn't willing to participate for the extra capacity in that way, as long as, do we have the assurances that's protected, or do we put that investment in the facility?
Sure. Let me ask another broad, maybe roadblock to any future operation. What I heard, one of the things I heard Commissioner Reed say is that if the county's got more capital investment in the facility overall, then it really ought to be the county that is managing it. Is that an absolute hard line?
I don't think it's an absolute hard line. I think it's the easiest way to overcome who pays for operation of the facility is the entity that has the most investment and the most gallons running through it. Is the one that manages it,
Is the expectation for when these new fuels tanks come online that the county will significantly increase its usage?
No,
No, because
we're just building for the future.
Those two arguments, don't coincide, because the city's gonna have more usage.
Yeah.
We desire to have more gallons.
Yeah,
Storage.
true.
So
So
those conflict.
Well, that's. a
Roger's
discussion that we
articulated
should have.
exactly what I was looking at there.
I hate to try to get into the mind of it.
I know it's a frightening place to be. I myself am racked with unimaginable nightmares over it.
I see the problem with that. I just don't know how you. I mean, there was two issues that started this going. One, our trucks during a terrible snowstorm sitting for hours to be able to fuel because of problems in the equipment with the facility, and there was just issues there. And then number two, once we realized those problems and thought, wait a minute, how critical this fuel situation is, do we have enough capacity? So we just want to make sure that it's run well and that we have capacity for the next 50 years, that we have an increasing ability to increase capacity.
Do we have an idea of, one of the things that I threw out there as a potential thing to think about and as an option would be that a proportion of what is going to be in these new fuel tanks be reserved for county use or county emergency use? Is there a number of gallons that is in the mind of the commission of what ought to be dedicated to emergency use?
Well, that's right. Now, we took just the rule of thumb, was they sized it in the beginning on what it would take to keep everybody fuel. What we tried to design into that is half full is empty. And so there's the agreement to keep it at least half full. And that was a very farmer engineering, a way of saying, okay, we're gonna keep half of our reserves, realizing that's gonna continue to run us in an emergency. It's just like money reserves. If you have money reserves enough to last, we try to reserve 9 months. But if it's in an emergency where there's no other income coming in, you're gonna cut back on the expenditures. Well, you would cut back on the usage also, to make the resource you got go as far as you could. But that's an on-the-ground decision made by the emergency manager or whoever.
It's whoever that concerns me.
Yeah,
We didn't get hard numbers from, well, when we had the discussion and the guy was here and he kept saying, well, we get it filled every 2 weeks and we don't go below half, we don't know how much we use, we don't. And from an emergency management standpoint, first you have to know what your actual use is, and then you have to be able to do the math to say 2 times that amount for 90 days. Minimum we want reserved to protect all of our resources, not just the county, because this is a regional, it's a regional thing. And that's the number, but it couldn't get to that number because it couldn't get the number from that side to say what their emergency capacity need projections would be. And that's a whole nother issue that I expect to see the city's involvement in emergency management planning, because they're half the player. The city is half the population of the county. So we need to, you know, there's aspects that we need to get together and talk about. So when, if we have an event that upsets the economy or the fuel supply for some reason, or that requires the need for all of our equipment to be out running 24 hours a day for 6 weeks to solve problems, because that's what happens. It just hasn't happened here yet. And that's what I want to see us prepared for, because that's part of my background. That's where that whole need more capacity comes from. And it's not, we fill tanks and set them aside and cap them because fuel has to be constantly used and renewed because it can't set. Right? So it's the capacity and maintaining the capacity at a level that maintains the security blanket, the functionality for all of the resources, because it's not just fire trucks and law enforcement, right? It's road graders and dump trucks and front end loaders and all that other stuff that moves all the rubble from the building that fell down in City Hall and, you know, all of that. But that's just part of what drove the discussion and the fact that you have to be able to talk about this stuff. So
It leads over into what you referred to as the minutia of communications. You know, because there's been a huge communications breakdown in this. And, you know, for us, it was out of sight, out of mind. You know, as long as we go over things were working, then 2 things happened. The request to change, which made us review the agreement, and when they were out there with their snowplows and that, you know, with those low capacity pumps trying to fill up, we couldn't get back out on the road very long. And you'll get Blair who whines about you having to get the garbage out of here, which affects the city too.
Listen, I think that's the priority.
yes, yes. I mean, we also what happened in New York where they stopped that for a month.
Anyway, that's,
I think
I've
we're
been
at
in
the
the
point
city
where
when there's
we've
been a
got a
garbage
solution.
strike, it's a
Yeah.
whole, you realize real quick that.
A couple of things you don't want to stop is
Ever.
wastewater and waste solid.
Yeah, those are two, my friend probably had a great way to describe that, but I'm not gonna do it in a meeting, so.
I think we've got the solution. If you're willing to work on it, put
I'm
together
gonna
some
put
ideas.
together a
And
few
then you and
options.
Roger work together.
I will,
time is of the essence.
I
because, you know, our
understand.
clock is ticking,
what I like to,
and we'd like to at least see the skeleton of an agreement or a plan to go forward.
what I'd like to do is maybe pitch a couple of real informal options with you. I'd like to do that before the end of this week.
Okay.
And, you know, I'll shoot you an email, and I'd like to, when you have a chance to read it and digest it, I'd like you to come and visit with me, because I think that's a little faster than an email. And we can talk about, well, this part of that option doesn't make any sense, or, you know, one thing that I was hoping I might see that I didn't see was this, and then we can maybe refine that down to a skeleton and then full body amendment to this thing. But I do agree with you that communication is important. I'm gonna try to get you some really informal general ideas on what a new capital, how to divide up a new capital thing would be that would maintain most of what's here.
It could be acceptable to the city council.
That could be acceptable to the city council. Why don't you and I work on making a pitch to that the city council could consider. Maybe they'll shoot us both down. If they shot me down before, it hurts, Roger, but you know, I've gone through it.
But I will, yeah, and see, that's why I don't want to put it off too long, and they'd get shot down. You know, that's
I
why-
understand that you have to make some decisions and the
That's
county's
why
gonna
we
make
said
some decisions.
that expressed interest in this, and it generally helps if you have somebody from the council who's involved in the discussions all along. You know, we were able to accomplish that with John Radford. When we put the data sharing agreement together and overcome all the obstacles, and then he could take it to the city council and sell it. Because it comes from, he knew what the concerns of the city were, address those. You know, and that's one of the successes.
Well, and I agree that was a success, and I remember writing words up on a piece of paper for that too. I will make the pitch that it would be really helpful to have a council member have one in mind. It's probably the same that you've got in mind. But,
Well, one that has stepped forward and expressed interest.
but I can't commit them to do anything beyond what they wanna do, and you know, and I know that there's strong opinions on the right way of doing things.
Yeah, I agree. But also Mike, maybe to me, it's a little more simple. Which ones will pick up the phone and take my call?
Well, I would hope I'm on the list.
No, I have that confidence, but it has been stalled and we're just trying to kickstart it.
Okay.
And we can get a Kickstarter program going recently.
That'd be an interesting,
Well, when you talk about taxpayers, it is in the benefit of all of them if we can utilize the current facility and continue to have this partnership, because it's been a success the last
Yeah.
15, 16
Well,
years.
that goes back.
It needs to continue.
Makes me remember why we had this together, is because as long as there is a cooperative, you know, why invent the wheel twice and pay for it twice? You know, we put this together under the assumption it would be more economical for higher volumes of fuel, to get better costs for operating expenses, to have a partnership. And that's what started it going. In fact, it was Craig Lords who came to us and said, hey, we want to do this, can we work something out? So.
After you let that convenience, far more convenient, you know, really go to one place to get fuel and not half of them go to Conrad and Bishop's full plant and half of them go to service stations using the cart.
A landslide
System,
on these trucks.
I remember pumps out here and the pumps at Conrad and Bishop when they had police.
And,
Far more convenient.
and then you're at the mercy of Conrad and Bischoff or somebody else who has an independent disruption. So that was.
Which is no longer a local company, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
anyway.
So let's, is there anything else? Yeah. Thank you
yeah.
for being here, and we look forward to what you can put together.
I don't have this.
On 589. 9511.
9511.
Yeah, just take out the 5 and it's 911
There you go.
when you're having a bad day.
Well, now that invitation's been made, you'll regret it.
He did say, when you're having a bad day, call that number.
That's what I heard.
Night or day.
Thank you for making that clear.
Well, day being,
I had a hard time getting to sleep
interpreted
last
as
night.
24
so it's good to know I put call in.
yeah,
I did too, so I couldn't have been one.
Okay.
Over to you.
Is there anything else in our road and bridge meeting that,
Don't think so.
no? Okay, let's go ahead and close the meeting.